1. This took place weeks, maybe 2, after the death of my great-grandmother. Her death really rocked our family hard because she'd been the real matriarch for so long. I was only 13 at the time of her death, and it was the first time I've ever lost someone so close to me. Anyhow, I decided to go over to her home one weekend and hang out with cousins that I was raised with, thanks to my great-grandma. We were all gathered in the living room, all 5 of us girls sitting on the couches, and nothing had changed. The chair she always sat in was still pulled out at the angle where she would drop into it to look over all of us. The spot she sat at the table still had her clutter of things. A big yellow mug she would drink her decaf coffee out of, pens, one of her Bibles, and numerous other trinkets. It was hard for us to look over there and not see her sitting. This was the first night we had all really gathered to see each other again, so we decided to share stories about her. We all called her Grandma. Grandma wasn't always the nicest, and she had her days, but she raised us nonetheless, as best she could, and loved us. The couches were set in a way where one was against the middle of the wall, and the other joined at the top end to form a sort of L shape. One of my cousins joined me on the couch that stuck out. We were chatting away when our oldest cousin's eyes grew large and she gasped, scurrying away from us at the farthest point of the couch. Being young girls, we all let out shrieks and ran to join her, huddling close. It was often that this particular cousin would play pranks on us, and that was where my mind immediately went when I started to climb down. I yelled at her, "What's wrong with you?" She replied, "I think I saw Grandma." That upset me. It wouldn't have been fair or funny for her to joke around like that, and I opened my mouth to tell her so. As I did, now facing the direction where she said she saw our grandma, I saw something that was almost a white mist form. It was more opaque than just mist, and it almost took on a form. Just as quickly as it came, it went. I'm not sure if it was a coincidence or not, but this all happened in front of another of my grandma's Bibles. Always opened and changed to whatever scripture she saw fit for that particular day. We were all too afraid to get up and see what it was, but eventually our great-grandpa, Papa, came in worried. He changed it to Psalm 23:4. While it was somewhat comforting that she might have come to say her goodbyes, none of us slept well that night. 2. This event happened a few years ago, and I think about it all the time. My family and boyfriend make fun of me all the time about it. My parents and siblings don't believe me, and I have a feeling my boyfriend doesn't really either. And I was on the phone with him when this all happened. My best friend is a very witchy person, so when I told her this story, she suggested it could have my soul following me. Which, once you read what happened, makes it even more creepy. I just really want other people's thoughts on this whole situation, so if any of you have had similar experiences, please let me know what you think this thing was. Before I start on the details, I just want to explain the area where this all happened. My parents live in rural Indiana, so that means lots and lots of cornfields. This happened near one, like 5 minutes from their house. The only thing down this part of road is a church, whose church sign lights up red, adding to that creepy factor. And an old horse farm. Part of the cornfield had also just been sold for a solar-powered power company, which had been sectioned off down the middle. So here's what happened. I was driving to my parents' house, and it was almost midnight. The cornfield is on my left, and I had the horse farm on my right. I was about 3 minutes away from the church sign. I am on the phone with my boyfriend, just talking randomly. He lived about an hour away from me. He wasn't really paying any attention to what I was saying, too busy playing some video game. I come around a slight bend in the road, and I can see something in the cornfield near the edge of the road. It looked like a cat, a bear-cub hybrid. It was grey with stripes, but it was still so black that you couldn't see colour. I'm having trouble explaining this part, like it was kind of blurry and a void or black, but still totally visible. And this thing was big. Definitely not the size of a standard cat, but more the size of a little bear cub. It stood on all 4 paws, but its limbs were so much longer than a cat or bear's. kind of like a cheetah's legs, and its eyes. They were just two little pinpricks of bright light. Its body may have been blurry, but its eyes shone a bright yellow-green, kind of like a glow stick. Whatever this thing was, it was standing completely still with its head turned toward me. When I came around the bend in the road, I drove right past it. I was like, oh my god, there was something in the field, to my boyfriend. And then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I turned to my left, and this thing was following me. At a straight-up run, too, with its head turned toward me. I was going about 50 or 60 because it's a back road at night, and everyone speeds down this road. This thing was keeping up with me and just staring at me. It kept up with my driver's side window, too. Not any faster or slower, and it didn't once look ahead. Its eyes were on me the whole minute it followed me. I finally made it to the church sign, and that's when it stopped. Just a few feet away from the sign. I looked in my side mirror and didn't see anything. I remember telling my boyfriend as all this happened, and he didn't seem too interested. I told my parents too, and they just laughed, saying it was just a cat or something. My sisters still laugh any time we drive that road together. I get freaked out whenever going down that road, even during the day. This all happened so fast, which makes it so hard to comprehend and explain. But I know what I saw. I just wish someone would believe me and explain it. Oh yeah, so my friend's explanation gets creepier. She said it could have been a manifestation of my soul that was there to warn me from something bad or evil. When you hear that it stopped right before the church, you think that it was something evil that stopped when it came near something holy, i.e. the church. But when you consider the fact that the church sign is literally bright red and demonic looking, and I have never seen anyone go into said church, it makes this explanation that much more creepy. Let's just say I don't like to think about my friend's explanation too much. 3. So I want to start off by saying I have no religious beliefs, and until very recently, no belief in the spiritual world. I currently don't know where I stand on the entire subject, if I'm honest. I have lived in the same house with my family for the last 19 years. I moved out to live with friends for 6 of those years and recently moved back. I have had some strange encounters which I have only recently addressed in the last few months. In total, there have been 5 encounters that I believe to be paranormal, or at least very curious. Only since encounter 4 have I really started to want to investigate what is happening to me. I'm going to tell you in chronological order from first to most recent what I have witnessed so far, in hopes that someone could shed some light on what I should do. Number 1. I was very young, probably the first year I began living in this house. I walked past the staircase in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, and at the bottom of the stairs, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a dark shape or figure. I stared at it, and it didn't move. I went to the toilet, and the shape was completely gone. There was no way it could have been my shadow, because there were no lights, and for years I just blamed it on my eyes, adjusting to the darkness from waking up. Number 2. I was feeling very emotional all day, and I can't remember what about, or even if there was a reason. I just remember being in tears. My boyfriend at the time came into my room to comfort me, and as I looked over his shoulder at the door, I thought I could see fingers just near the light switch. They were long, ladylike fingers, but no one was in my house other than us two. Of course, when he turned around, there was nothing there. Number 3. I woke up in the middle of the night, and the first thought I had was to go brush my teeth, so I did. The bathroom is right next to my room, and I literally come out of my door and turn to the left, and it's right there. I don't turn any lights on, I just start brushing. I look in the mirror on the wall, and it's a rectangle at the edge of it. I notice another dark figure. The shape is almost feminine, curvaceous. When I think of ghosts, I instantly think of a straight sharp type person. Or mass, but this was not what I'd expect. There's words being said in my ear, but the figure isn't anywhere near me. I talk back. To this day I don't remember the words, only that there was a conversation, and I just went back to bed. Between 3 and 4 is when I moved out and came back as an adult, and by this point, I had brushed off these experiences as lucid dreams. Number 4. So I am in bed. I hear someone quietly talking, not whispering, but just very softly speaking. In my head, I think that it's my mum and they just pretend like I'm listening. I then pick up my phone, which is right by my bed, and the light is so bright. But I see that the time is 2:38 a.m. I suddenly come to the realization that the voice is very apparent in my ear, and I remember that my mum works nights, and she doesn't return home until 7 a.m. I don't have a TV in my room, and the sound can't be coming from anywhere else. I suddenly go very cold and stiff with fright. When I look over by my bookcase, I see this shape once again. I was horrified. I did not sleep or move until my mum came home, and I felt a bit safer. This was the day I actually started worrying that something was following me. Even now typing this, I have chills. Number 5. This is the most recent occurrence, which happened about 5 weeks ago. I woke up to a loud bang again around 2 a.m. No one else is home, and we don't have any pets, so my first thought is to look out my window as it's the face of the house, and I thought it was something outside, or, rather dramatically, maybe someone was trying to break in. Nothing. I get back into bed, sitting up, and my eyes slowly adjust, and right in front of me is my bedroom door, where my coats and hats hang. I go very cold, and my heart feels like it's frozen in my chest as I focus on one of the coats. I thought I saw 2 arms coming out of each sleeve. I told whatever it was to go away, and I didn't want to see it anymore. I tucked into the blanket, and in the morning, one of my hats was on the floor. I have no idea or explanation for any of these things that have happened. I'd like to know if anyone has any advice, or experienced something similar. I believe whatever this thing is, it doesn't want to harm me, as it could have done it already. It's been 19 years. I do notice the pattern, though, that this always seems to happen when I'm feeling weak or vulnerable. Example, I'm either crying or just woken up in the dead of night. Help. 4. So I go to college in another state, and since I'm going to school from out of state, I have to live in the dorms, which isn't a bad thing. This year I managed to get a singles room all to myself on the top floor of one of my dorm buildings. It's a pretty spacious place, and I'm by myself and get to be independent, which is something I like. But as of late, I'm starting to become convinced that I may not be the only one residing in the room I am in. My dorm building is divided into 5 floors. Each floor has 2 wings with 20 rooms on each side. My room is located on the east side at the very back corner. I share a bathroom with another guy, we'll call him Anthony. So at first, living alone was fine. I had a roommate last year, and he was cool, but I wanted some more independence, so I got this room instead. I get my own space, and since I'm so secluded from everyone, I get all the peace and quiet that I want, and the guy I live next to is fairly quiet as well. So anyways, like I said, living alone was fine at first. But as the school year has been going on, I keep noticing really odd things happening. The first thing that was odd to happen in that room is that I've noticed that I keep misplacing things more often when I'm in there. I'm normally a pretty organized person, and I usually know where everything of mine is. Wallet, phone, book bag, books, homework, that sort of thing. I usually know where I put it. But for some reason I have been noticing that I keep misplacing things, or things are just not where I put them down to be. One minute I place my wallet down to go use the bathroom, or leave to get something to eat on the campus, and come back and see that my wallet wasn't where I placed it to be. But all of this I've just concluded to be the college stress, and I've just been misplacing things more and not remembering it. The second and scarier thing that has happened was that one day I woke up to my bathroom door. Me and Anthony share a bathroom and shower together, and we both have doors with locks on our side that only we can open, meaning if I lock my door in my side, he can't open it to come into my room, and vice versa if Anthony locks his door. I can't open it to go into his room. Well, for the sake of privacy and a little bit of protection, every night before I go to bed, I locked both my door to leave my room and the bathroom door. I remember this very well because it was the start of my fall break in October. Everyone in my dorm building went home except me because I lived 500 miles away and it wasn't worth it to go home for 3 days. So I stayed back. I woke up the morning of my first day of break and I go to use the bathroom to unlock the door and see that the door is wide open. Which is weird because I have made it a habit to always lock my doors. And the third thing has to be the scariest thing to ever happen to me. And Anthony too, and well, pretty much my side of the floor. Anyways, it was the winter and this was very late at night, around 3 in the morning I believe. And I was sleeping when all of a sudden, I was awoken to the sound of a loud boom at my door. The best way to describe this would be if someone were to just slam their entire body into a door. That was the sound that I heard. And it wasn't me that heard it either. When I got up to investigate, I saw that about 4 other people had opened their doors to see what happened. Some girl that lived a few doors down said she was studying and heard what appeared to be loud running footsteps jet across her door and down the hall towards the direction of my room. All of us didn't know what to think of it and just agreed on locking our doors for the night, something that I always did. So, what do I do? I'm not a religious person, but I told my parents about this, and they gave me a cross to hang in my room, and I guess it has decreased the amount of activity that happens in that room, but still my bathroom door occasionally remains open when I wake up. And I've also brought this up with Anthony, and he also said that sometimes his door is open too, but he says that he sometimes forgets to close his bathroom door before he goes to bed. Edit. Also, how could I forget another major part? The plants in my room all die super quickly, and so is any fish I have kept in there. I'm not saying I have a green thumb or anything, far from it, but I have bought a couple of orchids and sunflower plants to brighten up my room, and they all seem to wilt in a few days that I get them. I also bought 2 goldfishes this year, one at the beginning of the school year and one after winter break. Both have died within 1 week, so I don't know if that is supernatural related, but I forgot to mention that. 5. My family hasn't ever been wealthy enough to settle down anywhere, and that's absolutely fine with me. So we keep renting out houses and moving from place to place every few years. We aren't poor, so we do rent houses that are in the countryside preferably, and have some acres of land. This means that they are usually houses that are out on their own, so we found a perfect match to suit our needs, and moved into a farmhouse by a stream. Landlord was a normal guy, he was about 35 years old or so. Didn't seem superstitious or the type of guy that would believe in anything paranormal. So we settled in, and I really liked it. It was quiet, secluded, and pretty out there. The only unsettling thing we knew about it was apparently some weirdly cut rock was a burial stone. Must have been really ancient, it was a strange rock. I think it was some Celtic thing, not 100% certain on that. It took a few moments for things to start going wrong. It all started with bad dreams. Really bad dreams. Nothing that ever happened at first would translate into the real world. It was all at night. It was just fear. I was okay with it. Of course, after all these bad dreams, I became more on edge. A random creaking noise in the house I would have dismissed before would put me on alert. People not knocking on my door and just entering would give me a fair fright. I didn't talk about any of these occurrences to my family. However, my nights started becoming unbearable, so much so that I felt like some presence was telling me to leave. I don't mean this lightly. I feel heavy just writing about it. I was dreaming of some fight happening in our family, people screaming, crying. In the dream, I was going up in a spiral flight of stairs that was similar to a different one we had in one of our rented houses. The dream borrowed some assets from different dwelling places I had throughout my life. When I reached the top, there was some aggressive knocking at a door. I didn't see what was knocking, but I knew what it was. A while ago I had a nightmare, in which a witch that had features similar to that of the one in Spirited Away was smothering me. The knocking was loud, sharp, and rapid. And then I woke up. I quickly realized someone was actually running up the stairs. I lay frozen and assumed it's my dad going to my mother's room. Some urgent news in the middle of the night. Then, to my utter bafflement, my bedroom door practically blasted open. It was some serious force exertion. I heard the wood crack. Without thinking about it, I snapped out of bed and went straight to my mother's room to investigate. If maybe my dad just fucked something up and burst into my room like an idiot, because why would he blast it open like that? But of course, my mother was asleep. It terrified me. I just went back to bed and reflected on the situation. I couldn't find any logical explanation for the occurrence. My biggest regret now is not checking up on the damage on the door. That would probably have been a good indicator on whether this happened in my head or in the real world. Honestly, I don't know which I'd prefer. I like to think I'm in control in my mind. But I also like to think that if spirits are real, they cannot manifest in the physical world with such force. It's terrifying. I kept quiet about this too, for a while. It's funny though, because I feel like my entire family had suffered a breaking point at around the same time. The deciding night for me was when I had been in bed and heard someone walking towards me. No fear, because I thought I was awake and my mom was checking up on me. This being that either existed in my mind or in the real world knelt down to my face and began whispering. Eerily, she resembled my mother, but more spectral and sticky. She was not my mother. She wore some sort of robe similar to my mother, but she was not my mother. As I comprehended that fact, she floated, and I mean floated, over to my sister and began whispering something too. This experience upsets me now as I write it, because if it was real, it was very likely not a being from the house, but the ghost of my grandmother that I never met. I saw a few pictures of her, and she always eerily resembled my mother. Maybe it was her, maybe it was my mind, maybe it was just a spirit that happened to look similar. The point is, all around that made me upset, and now I was going to start talking about this to my family. I can't say it was a relief altogether, but it was something when I heard that my sister and mother experienced things very similar and disturbing at times in the night. It was all accounts that amounted very much to what I wrote, except some of their situations took place in the afternoon or the morning. But they were always alone. A tendency I discovered before I even spoke is that they had a strong feeling of someone watching before anything happened. I had the same. They felt cold. I also felt cold, etc., etc. So now we were out in the open about it, and we concluded that upstairs something sinister was happening, either when we were alone or at night. It wasn't until my mother was so wrecked after a bad night, and the landlord came over to visit and noticed. This is her recount of the encounter. I was not present. So I was tired and somewhat startled, and that must have shown on my face. John just smiled at me and said, "What's wrong? Trouble sleeping?" Of course, this was an obvious question to ask, but then he went on. "I didn't sleep upstairs my last few days. Fucking impossible. I hear them. Something is out here and I can't explain what." So basically, I understand they shared some of their experiences, and now everyone who slept upstairs could agree that something was amiss. To further reinforce the idea of something mad happening in this home, when my mother's friend flew over and slept in her room, she would wake her up in the middle of the night to say she heard someone walking, and then that she would see a figure approaching, or whatever it may have been. So basically, for the rest of my time at that house, any time my family would go shopping and I'd be home alone, I would experience inexplicable things. Extremely hard stomping around upstairs, dragging sounds that are really loud. The ground would shake until I left certain rooms. Honestly, I would just get lost if I tried to go through them all. Certain little doors would be forced open. They were fucking hard to move, man. The worst thing that ever happened there that made me want to make this post was the incident with the chalk drawing I made. I have it here in front of me now. I mainly keep it because my mother adores it. She doesn't even know what it is, she thinks it's a wolf, so I told her she's right. Basically, if you get your hands on it, there will be chalking. Sometimes in the middle of the night I would be touched by a cold hand from the right side of my bed, where the drawing was. I felt like something was always on that side of the bed. Then one morning I came to find that there were little handprints leading up the wall and then across the ceiling. Very hard evidence of foul play. I called my mother in to look at it. She took some shitty pictures of it. May upload them if I find them again. Just don't want family seeing this post. And I could also upload a pic of the chalk drawing itself, because it is kinda creepy on its own. I made it when I was 6 and it looks like a miserable animal, but everyone always told me it was quite impressive for my age. Not too long after that, we also moved. Not because we were scared shitless, but we were, but because we had to move. I thought maybe the bad voodoo or whatever would follow me forever. Thank God, only one fucked thing happened in this new house and it was harmless. Not even worthy of getting worried about. You know that box in The Conjuring that plays that weird music? That played in the gallery room and my sister and I heard it. Later my mom reported hearing it too in the middle of the night, without my sister and I revealing our own intel. But yeah, no hallucinations, no bad dreams, no nothing. My whole family is fine now, and we don't experience any bad things in this new house that have anything to do with the paranormal. Which makes me think even more that something with that farmhouse was incredible. Everyone that ever lived there had some story to tell. I could drone on about that house for a long time if I were on a voicemail with someone. But here's the gist of it. Thanks for reading. Edit. I forgot to mention that whenever an experience with any entity I could actually see would happen, exclusively during the night, while my room is lit up with the blue light of the moon, I would hear a gust of air traversing around the room, and it would suddenly get very cold. Then wherever the cold feeling would originate is where the entity would form. I am pretty sure at those times I was fully awake, because the cold air was moving around the room each time with a single audible gust. It could last for hours until I saw whatever it may be. It could traverse from room to room. Sometimes it would hover over my bed, and it would be extremely horrifying. I remember laying as still as possible and sweating like a pig every night nearly, if it hovered right over me. Then I could feel how cold and loud the gust was. It would hover over me for a particularly long time, then around the room in general. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 78. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, we're heading into the Easter weekend, so if that's something you're into, make sure you've got all your eggs and that stocked up by Sunday, it should be, which is also April Fool's Day. Indeed. Already got mine in. I'm sure I'll probably buy more rubbish for my niece and nephew. Even though I told my nephew last year was his last year, we'll make this his last year. I don't think he even cares at this point, I just like to buy stuff for them. Although last Halloween was his last Halloween, so we'll make this his last Easter. Totes for reals this time. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.